Hello, welcome to a new video. Today we're gonna have a look at actions in SolidStart, and actions are the counterpart of cache, which we explored in the last video about data fetching. If you haven't watched that yet, you have a link here at the side. You can watch that first. So what actions essentially do is invalidate the cached server functions that we use to fetch data. And to explore this a little bit, I have set up a little bit of an app. We have two data fetches here. Let's have a look at the code. First, you may recognize this from the last example. We fetch a date, and the other one is where we fetch the mock of a user, kind of a DB. We just use a little bit of object here. I don't want to set up a whole database. And we fetched it all with the use server directives, of course, because DBs live on the server. We can't access them directly from the client. And then I have an action here. And as you see, the syntax is very similar to cache, but in actions, you will probably always have function arguments to mutate the data in the database, right? So in this example, I decided to use add skill. So we add a skill to the array of skills of the user John Dev. And this is the setup. We fetch the date with create async. We fetch the user with create async and just render everything out. Okay, so now there are different ways we can use an action. Most of the time we will have some kind of a form, right? So let's just add a little bit of a form here, form, just like that for now. And there we have an input. We name that skill, type text, and our value will be our user dot skills dot join. Okay, so this is our setup, and we will also add a submit button at the bottom like that. Submit. So now what can we do? We have two options for forms. The cool thing is with action, we can make this working without JavaScript if we just pass the action as an action. So we say add skill. And now it's complaining that this doesn't work, because what we should do here is say we have form data, and this is also type form data. Okay, and now we can extract our skill const like that, and now it will not complain anymore. Okay, so this way we can use an action with form data that is directly passed in here. And then we also have to give it a method post. So we'll post the data to the server. Now we could also differentiate here between post and put and then delete. But for our simple purpose, we're gonna do something like this at the start. Okay, so let's add some styling. Flex, call, gap 5. So we have a little bit of a distance in here, and that should do it. Okay, so we have our input here, and we gotta give this a class of text black, so we can see that there's something already in here. So, and now what we can do is we add in some more stuff and say solid, and if we submit it, we will have React and solid. And maybe we have to change this here as well, right? So the new skills is skills.split, like that. Skill.split. Okay. So let's type in solid. Then if we submit the data, you will see two things now. Because by default, the action will clear all the cache. Although we just changed the user now, get date will also be updated, right? So if we add this, you see the time has changed, and we've also added the skill. And that worked now would actually also work without JavaScript, because we're not using JavaScript in that form, right? This action is just a native behavior. Solid will in the background do a post to the server and then re-render the whole page, just like you saw at the moment with the new data. So this is the first way we can use actions. Now, if we want to use JavaScript to, for example, enable client-side validation of the form data, which we not have here, we could add validation in this action, but this action will be executed on the server. And yeah, so if we want to execute action client-side and use client-side JavaScript as well, we can do that like this. Const, we call it update skill equals use action is the hook that you can use, and then you add the action to it. And now what we can do, instead of having the action and method post, we can use our onSubmit function and say here event. Now what we have to do first here, you know, we have to e.prevent default so that we don't submit to the server, and now we can get our form data from our target like that, and then pass this form data to update skill. Right now we could also use this form data to, you know, run a sort schema validation around it and so on. Okay, so that should do it, and let's have a look. Now with the same setup, we say solid, perfect, and then we click the submit button, and you see with the same result now with client side use of action, and we do that here. You could call this action now anywhere. I mean, you could also add this in a on mount or wherever you want to use that action. So, but as we talked about earlier, or mentioned earlier, unfortunately, all of our cached functions are being updated by default. But there is a way to kind of define which cached functions we want to update. And we can do that by returning something from our action. And we have three options. First option is return a reload. So reload is a function that is provided by Solid Router. And here we just can pass a revalidate prop. And here we have to pass the key that we want to update. So either by using a string, or we can also use the function name and then have a dot key here. If the function would use parameters, then we could also key for and then pass the parameter in here, like a user ID or something, right? But for our purpose, get user key is just enough. So now if we don't want to return any data, that's totally okay. Okay, so we do the same again here. Click submit, and now you see skills is updated or our user is updated, but the date stays the same. So now we have a way to actually tell Solid what has to be updated in the cache, and then that can be one key, but it can also be an array of keys, right? So we could add something more, like we could invalidate our session, for example, if we update the user, and so on. So this will also work just fine, right? Same result. So what else can we do? Instead of the reload function, we could also return a JSON, and I take this, but what we actually do is then we have to provide an object here. Also, this is an import from Solid router, and then we can add in a message and say updated skill, right? So if we click here, you will see same result. Date does not revalidate, and we still have the same data in here. And the last possibility that we have is we can return a redirect, where we first say we redirect to a path. I'll just use the same URL we are on now, otherwise you won't see anything. And then we can also say revalidate, and then revalidate whatever, right? Get user.key. We do the same thing now here. This will essentially now behave like a reload because we go to the same page, and you see date is not updated, but the skill is updated just fine. So those three functions are a way to narrow down the cache invalidation by key. Okay, so what else can we do with actions? We also can track if something is happening at the moment. For example, what we don't want is that a user consecutively clicks on the submit button if the action takes longer than a few seconds, right? So what can we do? If we use this action, then we can also use submission. So we say submit equals use submission, and then add in our add skill action. Now, by executing this function, this action, in the background a transition will be triggered. And now with submit we have access to that transition data. For example, if we go to our button, we can say disabled if submit dot pending. So as long as the action runs, the button will be disabled. Now let's also add some class in here, and then we say disabled opacity 50%, and maybe we do the same, just take out the same and put that in the form. Now we have already class. Let me say class list, and we do exactly this. Okay. And now we will also add a little bit of delay to our function, right, in here. We add in wait, new timeout, solve, let's say 3 seconds. So let me actually see something. We add in this data here and then click on submit. And now you will see the form is now grayed out until the submission already has ended. Cool, right? So that's a cool way to just block any interaction. We could also put that disabled in here, right? To any input. Or we could say in here, if submit is pending, we return early, right? So to make it really sure that nothing happens and we don't send the data again and again if a user is clicking on the button or a hacker tries to break our site by sending too many submissions. Right, okay, I think that's it for this video. We explored actions. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.